Well, I was about 4, and I've got such a clear memory of this. I really have. We had a family live next door to us at that time. Name was Taylor, and there were 5 boys. And boys being what boys are, they were rumbustious sort of lads, like, you know, a bit naughty. But they were always up to something, always up to something. So they must have devised this scheme of how, because I mean, we couldn't get eggs, could you? You see, during the war years. So they must have got this scheme in their head, because the hen houses used to be in a field where our new school is now in the village. And there were all these different hen houses dotted round with padlocks on the door. And they belonged to Mr. Jack Swinfield, whose farm at that time opened out onto Furlong Lane as it is now, across the road and into the field. So they took me with them because I was the smallest, and they pushed me through the bob holes in the hen houses, and I handed the eggs out to the boys, you see. Well, when they'd evidently, I think they'd got 2 each, so they must have had 10. And they gave me 2 when I came out to shut me up. Of course, I went home chuffed to death with these eggs. And Mum, I could see my mother yet. We had red tiles in the hall, and she was on her hands and knees cardinaling these red tiles. And she had like a sacking apron over her other apron so she wouldn't get all this cardinal all over her. I remember saying, "Look, Mummy, look." And she said, "Oh, Daisy, where have you had those from?" And I said, "Out the field." "No, tell Mummy where you've had them from." "Honestly, out the field?" Well, as far as I was concerned, yes, I had them out the field. She said, "Oh, you better come and show me." She must have been agitated because she only took the one apron off, because she never went anywhere with any apron on. She always used to take it off, even if she only went to the gate. And but she got another one underneath this old sacking thing. So she took that off, took me down the alley by the bungalow that led into that field, and I showed her where I'd had it from. Even took her to the right Henhouse, I think, and through there. And so Mum does no more. She didn't bring me home. She took me straight across the road and down to Mr. Swinfield's and hammered on his great big front door. Now, I wasn't very tall, I don't think, but it got a great big oak door, you know, that shape, with all the studs on it. And Jack Swinfield, it was his lunchtime, you see. And he came to the door and he said, "Now then, Mrs. Buckley," he said, "what's all this?" She said, "Well, I've got something to show you, Mr. Swinfield," she said. "Our Daisy's come home with these," and she opened her hands, you see. She said, "I don't know what you're going to do with her." She said, "I don't know whether I've got to take her home," she said, "and smack her, put her to bed." She said, "or whether you want to send for the bobby." She said, "Because she's been in your hen house, and they're locked, aren't they?" And he said, "Yes." Yeah, I could see him looking down at me like this, and he said, "Dear me, dear me." He said, "Are you going to be naughty again? Are you going to take anything that isn't yours again?" He said, "Or do I have to send for the bobby?" I said, "No, no, no, no." "Don't send for the bobby, I don't want," because all you could, you know, terrified the thought of the policeman coming taking you away from your mum and everything, weren't you? He said, "Well, if you promise me," he said, "you'll never do anything like that again." He said, "We won't send for the bobby this time." He said, "And I'll leave the rest to your mum." "That all right, Mrs. Buckley?" She said, "All right then, Mr. Swinfield." And off we went, me shaking in my boots. Went to bed. When I got home, that was that. But do you know that we never went a week after that, but what, we didn't get half a dozen eggs on our doorstep. There's those blue sugar bags they used to put the sugar in, and there used to be 6 eggs wrapped in newspaper, individually wrapped in newspapers, shoved in one of those sugar bags from Jack Swinfield.